good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And thank you for coming to this event. I'm delighted today to be hosting Rubén Blades into this chat, also Chantal Mesa and Brad Evans. So I'm going to be sharing this conversation. My name is Manuel Barcia. I am the Pro Chancellor for Global Engagement at the University of Bath. And I'm going to try to do the honors, as I said. So Rubén Blades, as all of you will know, is a celebrity, is an icon, a Latin music icon for all of us. Many of us grew up with his music in Latin America. He was at the heart of the New York salsa revolution in the 1970s. His landmark albums include classic Afro-Cuban salsa are infused with elements of rock, jazz, Latin, and global influences. He has won 12 Grammy Awards and 12 Latin Grammy Awards. Released in 1984, his song Desapariciones, Disappearances, is widely regarded as a powerful musical testament to the issue of forced disappearances in Latin America, particularly during the dictatorships and armed conflicts that plagued the region in the 70s and 80s. That this Blades anthem has been picked up and adapted by so many artists speaks to the way both the violent practice and the artistic response transcend space and time. Beyond his artistic achievement, Blades holds degrees in political science and law from the University of Panama, as well as an LLM from Harvard Law School. He ran for president of Panama in 1994 and has served as a Minister of Tourism between 2004 and 2009. In 2008, the Lloyd Music Library at Harvard University established the Rubén Blades Archives to preserve his work and papers. Chantal Mesa is a Mexican painter based in the United Kingdom, whose work practice focuses on the human as seen through various forms of disappearance. Her work is held in public and private collections around the world, and over the past 15 years, her paintings have featured in exhibitions and biennales in prominent museums and galleries. Her work has received the support of grants and rewards of prominent institutions in the cultural sector, including a distinguished recognition in her birth province of Puebla, Mexico. Chantal's State of Disappearance series has been exhibited in Bristol, London, and is now on a permanent display at the Chancellor's Building here at the University of Bath, where the collection has been generously gifted by her for educational purposes. Her recent Eden Blitz show at St. Mary's Redcliffe in Bristol during March and April was the first contemporary art exhibition in the iconic venue's 800 years history and was featured on BBC One Easter Sunday morning broadcast. Chantal's latest Disappearance of Work collection is currently being exhibited at the GCR Gallery at Oxford University. Our third speaker today is Brad Evans. Professor Brad Evans is a professor of political violence and aesthetics and founding director of the Center for the Study of Violence here at the University of Bath. He's the author of 20 books and edited volumes, along with over 150 academic and international media articles. He has led columns of violence for the New York Times, the LA Review of Books, and currently the American Book Review. Brad has also written extensively on the importance of art in developing serious political and social responses to atrocity. For the past 8 years, he has been largely working on the violence of disappearance in collaboration with Chantal Mesa. So I'm going to give you the floors now so that we can start this conversation. I will try to stay in the background as much as I can. I may chip in occasionally, but I hope that this can be beneficial for all of us. And thank again all three of you for coming. And Rubén, I know you're joining us from the other side of the Atlantic, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to begin, Rubén, by saying what a real honor and pleasure it is to have you and have your company here with the University of Bath. And I'm sure I extend that thanks from the entire University of Bath community. It's a real, honor for us to be able to deal with this. And obviously for myself and Chantal, especially, we've been working on the problem of disappearance now for the last decade. Your work is very influential in that. And so it's very kind of, important for us to have this conversation. I'd like to take you back, if I can, to 1984 and the year in which you released what has arguably become one of the most famous songs ever written on disappearance, Desapariciones. And I guess I'm intrigued. You know, I know a lot of your work historically always had a very strong social consciousness to it anyway. But I'm wondering what prompted you to confront the issue of disappearance in itself?
Well, first of all, thank you all, and hello everybody wherever you are, and thank you all for inviting me to participate. Uh, my reaction, it's very interesting because I write basically when I'm upset about something. And this was one of those moments. I did not react only because I was a musician, but as a human being, I reacted to what was happening, and I use music as a way to express my rejection and anger towards all types of dictatorships, whether they're left or right, and solidarity with those people that persecuted and killed. And it was also a way to let the families of the disappeared to understand that they had the solidarity of the outside world, and that we were aware of what was happening to them. I found that in many places silence was the way that most people lived under, and the governments were not really letting anybody know what the impact was outside of their borders. So I wanted to make sure that they knew that we knew, and to make them aware that they were not alone on this.
Thank you, Rubén, and you don't know how much it means to me to be able to speak about this with another, what I consider creator or an artist, if you like that name. I don't like it myself. I like calling him my painter, musician, whatever you like. But I think, I've been thinking myself lately a lot about this. And recently, 2 days ago, we hosted an event in Oxford, and Lisette y Carmen told us something to everybody in Oxford, which was really powerful. She said, we want you to be the voice, our voices, because we can't speak in our country. And I think what you're saying precisely, I mean, I create images, right? I'm a painter, but you have that power of the poetry, writing and putting into words something sometimes that is just, like you said, it's difficult to start to untangle, just to try to find a way of having to express to the world what is happening. And so I think for that reason, having a composition through music, to melody and the voice is a powerful tool that I know many families in Mexico have always liked your songs as well, specifically the song, your music, because of that reason. They feel heard, and they know that you carry a message. They want it to be heard. So yeah.
I was very careful not to succumb to the vanity of the writer. I was always trying to be very clear, and to use the words that could be understood in any part of the Latin America, because each part of Latin America has its own idioms and its own way of expression. Although we all speak Spanish, there are different ways to reach people in terms of localisms and certain images. So I concentrated in the foundation, and my intent was to make a song that people would rather listen to than dance to. And that's important because at the time, the record labels didn't want preachy songs. They wanted songs that were danceable and hits, commercial hits. So, and my decision to use reggae was, I used reggae for Desapariciones because, first of all, I was friends with Peter Tosh, and I was also aware of what Bob Marley was doing, and Bob was aware of what I was doing as well. So reggae had a political sort of connotation at that moment worldwide because of the direction that Marley took it. So I used the reggae because of that political sort of tone, but also because it's a rhythm that is almost hypnotic. And I created a melody that was not flashy. I didn't want any flashy melody interfering with the lyric. So, and I created a circular way to express the opinions, so almost like a sort of a round table where not one story was more important than the other. They were all important. So I use that circular repetition sort of driven to help me present the testimonies of people. I had read about the situation. I had read testimonies, and what I did was, instead of me trying to voice my concern, I let those characters, those people, speak for themselves. And the point that mattered was to express how these events were hurting people from all walks of life, not just political people, but people, civilian, human beings. And the circular repetition that I said helped me to help people focus on the lyric and not necessarily on the dance. So the fact also that I used those testimonies made the lyrics become a reflection of reality, of fact, and not invention. So I think all of this was not art fiction, as it were. It was more art fact reporting, utilizing an artistic way to express myself, and one that could reach everyone, because music reached everyone. Even though the songs were banned, people would find a way to listen to them and comment.
And it is that way you think, sorry to interrupt, but the circle, I just wanted to, like, a little thing mentioning it. If you think that is the reason why, then it has survived till today.
I think so, because first of all, it's one of the reasons the music I've written is still being played by audiences that were not born when the songs came out. Is that I was always commenting on reality, on things that affected us all, and life is repeats itself in spiral. So unfortunately, in some cases, things I've written about, they are still a problem today. So the new generations inherited the pain and the problems of their grandparents and their fathers and mothers. So I used to repeat over and over. People thought that, oh, it's over now, that when the dictatorship disappeared in Chile and in Argentina and Uruguay, oh, now it's over. It's like, no, it's not over. It's never over. And you always have to be aware of these things and what happened. So I think that the problems persist. And what helped me, I think, was also very, very important, that I wasn't writing from an ideological position. So this was not political propaganda. This was about humans, about human beings being killed and tortured by any type of dictatorship, as I said before, whether it is left or right. It hurts the same. It's not justified. So I think that the songs survived because they were honest, basically. I tried to keep them honest, and I'm very glad that I managed to do that, because there's always like I said, the vanity, the danger of becoming you, the artist becoming the news, which is not the way it should be.
I find a lot of really interesting parallels, Ruben, between your work and what Chantal actually does. And you talk about this idea of circularity, and the collection we have here at the University of Bath, actually, there's a lot of circularity in the imagery and this kind of, but also you say in that kind of, that ethical decision and a conscious decision not to make yourself the story and
Yes.
not putting yourself in the story, which is a very powerful and a big challenge, which is kind of counterintuitive to so much of the creative industry today, in terms of that demand to be the central figure of the narrative. And
because the record labels kind of push you in that direction. They want to create artificial heroes. They want to create something that can be repeated over and over and appeal to the majority of people possible for marketing reasons. So I knew that some songs were not going to be accepted by some people, but I wasn't concerned about fame, or I wasn't concerned about success in those terms. And I have to say, I was allowed to record. And I think at the beginning of my career, Willie Colon's reputation helped me very much, because he was already an established artist. later on, when I went on my own and Buscando America and where Desapariciones is included, that was a situation where, you know, people sort of had already an idea of what my interest was in writing. So I had a public, and I think a lot of people came up to the song because, like I said before, it wasn't a song directed to a specific demographic. You know, I wasn't writing for the teenagers, and I wasn't writing for the dancers. I was writing for society, for the community. So that meant that people who didn't dance listened to the song. People who were not political listened to the song. People of all ages listened to the song. The worker and the employee. And then some people make comments about it. And then people who weren't interested all of a sudden tune in to see what it was.
And do you think that that's where the power resides then for creators, any creator, musician, painter, and so on? So you are in a way a messenger. You are using your abilities to, yeah.
And you make a statement. I mean, it's important for you to pretend to be virtuous, to try to be better than what we are. You know, I am not a perfect human being, not by any means, but there are certain things that I am proud that I've tried to do at one point. You know, and that's all we can do is to contribute and see what happens. You know,
and I always say there's also the way in which you like some of people say they call the great art is when you actually touched upon, in a way you are talking about something specific, say in this case disappearances, but when you focus on that human suffering, what is happening? You know, when you make it, when you talk about the human, then you make it universal. And that is why so many families around the world can identify, or say in this case, Latin America, could hear you, even if you started from one point, a specific thing that happened, you know, whatever year, whatever country, they could still relate to it because of that ability for you to go out of your own song, on your own, out of your own writing, even if you want, you were connecting through the human level.
I think also that you know, you leave your comfort zone. People are aware of that at some level. They understand that you don't probably need to do this to make a money or to, you know, to do anything that would benefit you. But I think also this can happen to anybody. This can happen to anyone. This is not a problem that is only indigenous to certain country or area in the world. It can happen to anyone. So the fact that it's an experience that can hurt anyone in any language, in any country, in any at any age, also makes it a matter of interest for people to see what is this about, what is this what is happening, and people identify again with simple questions. Where's my son? Where's my daughter? Where's my mother? Where's my father? Where are they? These are simple questions. You know, and anyone, again, you don't have to be a member of a political party to feel moved or to feel interested or concerned about something like that. You just need to be a person to have feelings. You know, if you're a sociopath, okay, it's not going to work. But if you're not a sociopath, and I think most of the world is not, it's going to affect you. And I also want to say I'm not the only one who ever did this. You know, other people did it also. But the thing is that we're talking about this particular period, which was a very, very violent period from the 80s, late 70s, 80s. It was horrible.
I'm talking about the complexity of emotions you talk about, Rubén. We have this again when we're engaging with searching collectives today, and we talk to the mothers and the daughters who are trying to find loved ones, especially in Mexico, and the complex array of emotions you talk about, from anger to utter sadness to that just unknowability and the real terror of that unknowability. But I'm wondering, in terms of when you were putting together this particular song, and you said you did a lot of, reading and engaging with the testimonies. What were those stories that really captured you for this song, and how did that come about in that process?
Well, there were simple experiences of people asking very simple questions. Like I said before, my daughter was coming from school. You read them in alternative papers also. This is important. At the time, I was not very much involved in the internet. I don't think we had. I did not have a computer. So you would read every so often, especially in newspapers like the New York Times. You would read accounts of scenarios. You could read from international cables, interviews, UPI or AMP or Reuters, Agencia Acan F. You would be getting information of scenarios. Although I have to say the information was very much limited because it was very hard to get facts and to get the reality of what was going on. And then myself, I played in Argentina in '83, and I played in Uruguay in '83. And the dictatorships were in position. They were. It was an interesting situation because I remember that I played Padre Antonio. I played it in Uruguay, and when I finished the song, first time we played it live was in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, and 2 days later we played it in I thought it was Desapariciones in Uruguay, but in Uruguay the dictatorship was very solid, and when we finished the song, there was not a sound in the place. There were about 3,500 people in there, and there was not one sound. I'm saying nobody went like this, nothing. It was dead silence. And I remember the band looked at me and said, "What happened?" I said, "I don't know, but let's play the next one." And we played the same song, and I was pretty much convinced that we were going to be arrested. That's my feeling. Was they didn't react because they didn't want to be a part of this, but I thought that was so strange. I never saw anything like that in my whole life. 11 years later, I found out what happened. I went to a Jaime Ross concert in Buenos Aires, and one of the musicians of Jaime was there that night. And I said, "Why didn't you were there when they didn't applaud?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, the people did not applaud because they were afraid." He said, "No, we did not." No. I said, "Why did not they applaud?" They said, "We didn't applaud out of respect." So the people knew, they knew. They just had different ways to express their support or their solidarity with the song. Mm-hmm. But I really think that the fact that, and I always go back to that, the fact that I'm not representing an ideology, I think that helped a lot to provide the opening for people to come and meet me halfway and say, "Well, let's see what you have to say." So it's very important because some artists think that you must be a political artist. I disagree with that. I disagree with that because political artists, for me, are this close to being propaganda artists. And the moment you start making propaganda, that means that you are not criticizing, you are not being objective, you are not seeing the other side. You have to. As a lawyer, I was trained to hear both sides. And then out of that, deduct what is correct, or at least fair. So,
But it's also very interesting what you say, because Brad and I will be thinking a lot and writing and talking with the students as well about this idea of silence, which is something I also confronted in Mexico. Like, I couldn't understand my own silence, I would say, at some point, right? But then you say, what is this thing? Yeah. Our silence, yeah. And then you think, well, what is this thing, silence? And of course, with art, you think, well, a painting is nothing but an image, and you will think is silence, but it's not.
Guernica,
see?
I remember that. That's such a wonderful story. The Nazis, the Gestapo took Picasso, arrested Picasso because of the painting Guernica, which was the evaporation by the Nazis of that Basque town. And the Nazis went to him and said, Did you make this? And showed him the painting, and Picasso said, no, you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So painting is a very, very powerful
Yeah.
instrument as well.
Mhm.
But it takes let me just interrupt for a second. I really think that when I think about Desapariciones, I think I have always thought about this song and other songs that you have written, and some of the art that we see as well as small acts of resistance, right? But the story that you're telling about what happened, say, in Uruguay, actually makes it a very, very public, because a lot of the resistance that we see is really done, in the kitchen, in safe spaces. We gossip about the people who are oppressing us, and these things actually kind of take a life of their own. But this is very much in your face. What the story that you're saying about Picasso or your story in Uruguay, this is very much in your face. So this requires a different kind of bravery, right? And I said that to somebody coming from Cuba.
I have to tell you that I was afraid all the time. I was not a hero. I don't feel like a hero. I was very afraid, but I'm also afraid for my friends, for my musicians. When we played in Buenos Aires, the dictatorship sent people there with cameras. They filmed the whole studio, the whole show. And I was not alone. Los Abuelos de la Nada were there as well. So there were a lot of young people there, but there was such enthusiasm that I knew that the dictatorship was coming down. I mean, I knew Alfonsín was a candidate at the time in 1983, and he became the president in those free elections that followed. But in Uruguay, no, in Uruguay, the Tupamaro movement had been neutralized, and the dictatorship was very much in position. As I recall, if I recall correctly, we played and there was a curfew at night in Uruguay at the time. So, it's nobody wants to be hurt, So, but at the same time, my position was, my feeling was, I need, in order to respect myself, I need to do something. I had to say something. That's what I felt. And not because I'm a hero, because I'm not, and not because I wasn't afraid. I was afraid.
Can I ask you just like a very, well, I don't know whether it's personal. I would say it's personal because you're a musician and you sing and use your voice who you exist in a way, right? So, but could I ask whether when you speak, because for me it's so strange because I've been learning to speak about a disappearance in English in a way because I have found a way to be able to speak about it in English, and this I was saying 2 days ago. And an Argentinian came and then he said and thanked me some for saying certain things, and he said, I traveled and I moved to Oxford in the 70s, and then the dictatorship exploded, and then I came back again a few years later, and I noticed that people were not talking. Like they were talking in a different way, and I was not, because I was not through that. I didn't live strongly that period. Then I couldn't understand that lack of not lack of language, but that there was something in the voice that changed. So my question would be a bit more about: do you think that when you sing the song or sang the song then, or even still now, there is something more that I don't know, that passes through you, that warns you or gives you the power of when do you realize fully what are you saying through your voice?
Oh, yes, always. In everything but one advantage I have and responsibility is that I write my own material. I write the material. So I cannot blame somebody else and say, no, it wasn't me, it was him or her. I write it. And it's a super good question because I was in Mexico once in the DF at a popular neighborhood called Tepito.
Mhm.
And they had invited me to speak to the school. And it was a school from elementary school to like 8th grade or something like that. And all the teachers were there and all the parents that could were there and everything. And I don't like to show up with speeches. I think I never liked them when I was in school and somebody showed up with a speech. I pretty much blanked myself, closed myself. So instead of a speech, I go and say, my name is so-and-so, and I do this and this, and please ask questions. So people started asking questions, and there was one little girl. She was about 8 years old, and I could see a little hand, and and I said, the little girl over there, because everybody was asking all kinds of questions. And I said, yes. She gave me her name, and I said, what is your question? And you know what she asked me? She said, do you feel what you sing?
Ah, sí, sientes lo que cantas.
Siente lo que canta. ¿Usted cree en lo que canta? Do you believe in what you sing? And the teacher was scandalized. Oh, no. Oye, digo, no. That's the best question that anybody has asked me in a long time. And the response to your question as well is yes, I do, because I believe in it. And that's why I continue to sing. I mean, if the moment that I stop believing, or the moment that I think that what I'm saying is not true or it's artificial, I will not do it again. I would have not done it again. But that's why every time I go in front of an audience, it's fresh. And I explained, some people say I talk too much. I said, no, I think when you're doing a concert, if you want to just hear the song, then stay home and listen to the record player. When I'm on stage, this is the area of my responsibility with my fellow musicians, my band. We have a set list, and I'm going to tell you why I'm doing this. It's not just that I'm going to show up and repeat, try to faithfully repeat what I did on an album. I want you to understand why I'm doing this and what the song is about. So yes, I do. I do feel it. I feel, and that I think has kept me happy all these years and active. Otherwise, I think I would have quit a long time ago.
You talk about this responsibility you feel, Rubén, and I guess I'm kind of mindful as well in terms of the work and the life experiences that Chantal brings with her work as well. And I'm thinking about, obviously you writing this song back in the 1980s, and then and I think your work was very pivotal in terms of giving a cultural awareness to this problem called disappearance. Now we look in terms of the contemporary moment today, and especially in countries like Mexico, where there is this monstrous kind of explosion of disappearance. How do you feel when you look at your kind of response to disappearance in the 1980s, and in many ways the problems become worse today? How do you think about that in terms of the situation now?
I first of all, I think that it's a phase. I think that there's something that is I'm been thinking about this, and I some people think that what is happening today is an era of changes. But I don't think so. I think it's a change of an era. It's a whole different thing because it's a lot more complex. It's not just changes within what is happening. It's not like, oh, we go from the iPhone 8 to the iPhone 16. No, this is not an era of changes. It's a change of an era. Everything is being put heads up, heads down. So we have to, the fight now is to maintain virtue, because truth has become an opinion. Facts no longer seem to, there are some people now arguing that the earth is flat. We would have not had that discussion 30 years ago. It would have been impossible. Said, what are you talking about? Today, well, I have the right to think that the earth is flat. And you have to respect the right. No, I respect your right to give an opinion, but I don't have to respect a stupid opinion. That's not what I have to do. I have to criticize opinions that are racist, opinions that are sexist, opinions that are anti-human. All of a sudden, because you have the right for an opinion, I'm going to now accept that you think that we should kill all the Jews in the world, or that we should do, women should be banned, or the Palestine should be all killed. I don't know what your opinion is, because it's your opinion. But if your opinion is offensive to humanity, I don't have to support it. Who says? And I don't have to respect that either, because that's absurd. So I think it's a phase. We're going through a phase. The thing about Mexico that really, and I wrote a song that is not out yet. It's called Ayotzinapa. But Ayotzinapa as an example, because again, it's not just Mexico, it's everywhere. The thing in Mexico that shook me to the core was the disappearances in Mexico occurred during a democratic government, not a military dictatorship. And the fact that it happened under a democratic government is something that should have given us, all of us, everywhere, not just Mexico, pause. Because it's not supposed to happen. And at this time, after all these years, and we still don't really know what happened to those 43 students, we're still not sure. Do I think that they know? Of course I do. There are too many facts. Why hasn't something been done? And then when you come to judge that situation of those disappearances, and the same with Ciudad Juarez, and Juarez and the women disappearing in Juarez. I mean, the fact is that we have not moved and demanded as a society, as a group, the end of this and an explanation for what has happened. I don't know if in countries that have less population, it would be easier. I don't know. When we think about it, and also I don't know the degrees of fear. When we're talking about heroes, Victor Jara was a hero. You know, Victor Jara from Chile, he was killed by the dictatorship. We should never forget that. Forget him. This was a good man, a good person, an artist, a fellow artist. He didn't do harm to anyone. And he was killed by people who thought that he was dangerous because he did not support their opinions. Victor Jara from Chile. So when you think about all the people that have been killed and disappeared in the world, but now speaking specifically about Mexico, I wonder if the amount of people and the possibility to create an effective type of organization is something that is preventing these scenarios from being addressed and resolved. Because, I mean, although Ayotzinapa was louder, it could have not been. Everybody I'm Panamanian and I knew about it. Why hasn't it been finally cleared? Why? That's the question. And I think that's a question that more people should insist on having answered. So
I was going to ask just one more question before passing you over to Manuel. And I think it's what, you know, and I'm really taken by you mentioned of Victor Jara, but the importance of art in itself as a response to the atrocities of history. And I think I'd like to address a question to both you and Chantal, because one of the things which comes up when people are asking Chantal about her work is how can something so horrific also look so beautiful in terms of the artwork? And the same about your music as well. You know, you write this beautiful song, which is also dealing with something which is deeply tragic. So I'm wondering how both of you, and I'll start maybe with you, Rubén, then to Chantal, and then I'll pass over to Manuel then for closing questions. How do you see art and its response to the intolerable? And, you know, what is it about art that does something that other things perhaps can't do?
it's a great question. I don't know if I'll be around when finally the issue is presented scientifically. I really believe that our DNA consists in much more than just the physiognomy of our ancestors, organs and whatnot. I think that the transmission of emotion, the transmission of good, the transmission of what is universally solid it occurs every day in every birth. So I do believe that we are capable, we are born with that capacity to express from some part of our brain that has not yet been discovered, emotions and messages that are transcendental and are universal. So I think art is that. Music is that. That's why it affects animals, it affects plants, it affects everything. Painting is something that provokes a reaction on people, regardless of their origin, race, sex, whatnot. You see a painting and it moves you, it touches you, just like a song does as well. So I do believe that we have the capacity to understand that from a very, 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 very elemental, universal point of truth. So I'm not surprised of my inclination initially to use art as a way to present positions. Gabo, Gabriel Garcia Marquez de Gabo used to say that, he used to tell me, he said, you are a chronicle. You're tú eres un cronista que canta. You know, you write chronicles that you sing. Some people publish them, you sing it. So that's to me was very, it made all the sense in the world to, instead of just writing, also singing. But that singing, that I think that idea that I could do that comes from somewhere that I don't know how to explain, but I do believe it's universal, and I do believe we all have it, and we all have the capacity to express that through art.
I think we should leave it like that. I don't want to answer and maybe I'll ruin everything. But you know what I will probably, it's just that it keep reminding me this mother that she, well, there was few people, especially women and also men, that were saying to me when looking at this paintings in the gallery of the State of Disappearance series, and they kept saying to me after they told me themselves the stories which are very painful to them, and then after I told them what's happening in Mexico and all, and she said, and they kept saying, "Oh, how beautiful!" And then I was just looking at the piece, and what do they mean? What do they mean? And one day I just dared to say to one of these women, I said, "So, excuse me, do you mind if I ask you why do you say Why do you say they're beautiful?" And then she just looked at them and said, "Well," and I said, "Do you think is that because you recognize that someone has recognized you or recognized your pain, your sorrows, your whatever is happening? So another human has been able to recognize that's the beauty. You see yourself seen." So it's reminding me a lot of what you've been saying to us, sharing with us today. Precisely that. If you remain yourself in a way out of your creations, whether it is music or painting or whatever other things, or even conversations, you go out of yourself and you just remain on the conversations that is happening and recognizing the other human. I wonder whether that's what you're saying precisely. This is the moment where we have to remain, to listen to, in touch and not connected through technology, right?
I mean, then that's the difference between good and evil. It exists. There's no doubt about that, regardless whether you're not religious or let's not talk about religion. Let's talk about spirituality then. But you cannot deny there's a spirit and that there is good and there is evil. You see it every day. So, and we are a part of the struggle. We are. So, I just think that, again, I don't really think that we have explored enough the genetic backgrounds. I do think we inherit that from some essential point of the universe. We're all part of this situation. I don't know how. I don't know how many other dimensions exist, if they do, that we are not aware of. But I do feel in my inside that there is a connection with something primal and good that is universal. And I think that is what informs and feeds our desire to be artists. I think that's the reason why you paint and I sing.
I'm going to jump in. Before I close, Rubén, I wanted to ask you a question. It's quite interesting that you mentioned the word chronicler, because I actually wrote it down for my concluding remarks. So I'm a historian, right? I'm a 19th century historian, and I'm listening to what you're saying about this connection. And I keep thinking, I work on the history of African slavery. basically every single historian I have looked at has some kind of suffering, one kind or another, including something that was pointed out to me by Brad recently. Part of this story is a story of disappearance as well. These people vanished from their homelands. They were taken away and they were dumped somewhere else, and the ones who survived the Atlantic crossing. And very often they didn't have an opportunity to speak. It's a remarkable thing how much silence there is in the historical record, you know. And as you say, you know, it could be that through our DNA, we are actually getting some of that, some of these echoes handed down. But the fact that people like you or like Chantal are actually able to translate this feeling into art or into music is really remarkable. And there is also, and this is a bit of a ramble, but there is also a pedagogical angle to this. I think I mentioned this to you when we first communicated. I listen to Ojos de Perro Azul almost every day, right? And this is a bit of a confession. I have used it in class in the past, but I use always the same line. If you don't use your head, someone else is gonna use it for you. And I make a point of telling my students, this is really, really important moving forward. There is so much manipulation that if you are not able to think by yourself, then we fall in all the traps that you have been raising.
Especially now with artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand the impact that this is going to have worldwide. And I'm not talking about economics only.
Yeah.
This could not have happened at a worse time, because right now we have people that we thought were rational saying that, you know, there is such thing as alternate facts. You know, if you don't like this fact, you can make one. All of a sudden, truth is opinion.
Yeah.
And when you have a robot that you can utilize to express with more clarity than you're capable of hateful doctrines or lies, and we don't have the capacity to discern between one and another,
Yeah.
We're in trouble.
But you know, you said that many years ago in that same song, right? You actually said, hoy la mentira es más fuerte que la verdad.
A la hora de la verdad, ¿de qué color es tu mentira?
¿De qué color es tu mentira? Y hoy la mentira es más fuerte que la verdad. Yeah.
Y hoy en día, sí, señor.
So you have been.
¿Qué es mejor, perder el alma o la vida? It's what is best to lose, the life or your spirit.
Yeah. This is one of these illuminating songs, and you know, all these songs that you have that also touch on social issues, you know, Adan Garcia or Padre Antonio and Monaguillo Andres.
You know that the Perro Azul was in that album that I did about. I tried originally. I told Gabo, let's write an album together, and he said no. And I said, why not? He said, because we're never gonna finish. So you do it. And I did it, and I used his titles. I didn't use. Everybody just talks about Cien Años de Soledad. I said that's the only thing he ever wrote. I don't even think it's the best thing he ever wrote. And I told him. But anyway, the thing is that nobody liked the record. I did the album, and it was one of my most attacked albums. Gabo called me one day and said, you know, I'm in pain, my body aches. And I said, what happened? I thought he was sick. He said, no, it's from taking hits because of you.
But you know, Ojos de Perro Azul is a pretty good story.
I think so too. It survived all these years. We just played it 2 weeks ago. We played it in different cities, and you know, and it's a very good chart by Oscar Hernandez.
Yeah,
did a wonderful arrangement. But anyway, that's one of my favorite lines. A la hora de la verdad, ¿de qué color es tu mentira?
Yeah.
At the time of truth.
Yeah.
What color do you choose to lie? What is your lie color?
I have to tell you something. It's like it's been sort of a north for me many times over my life, especially the back end of the song. Do you guys want to ask any other question before I close? Anything else?
I have a question. I'd like to. What is the best time to go to Bath?
Whenever you come,
I'm not talking a shower.
I think it would be better in January. When is the best to come to Bath?
Yeah, to
Yeah.
Bath, to be
Summer, spring, summer is always the UK,
No. January, February, because that's when he can make us, happy. January, February is the most horrible time to just like, it's really grim. It's like there's no sunlight. So if you come, Ruben, in January, February, you'll make my life, like amazing.
She's being selfish here, okay? But we will welcome you wherever you want to come. I can talk to anyone.
I'm very interested. I'm very interested, and I don't know England that well. I've only been in London. I played there a couple of times in Brixton and a couple of other places. But I'd love to.
Maybe you could play here. Maybe you could play for our students.
But I don't need to go there to play. I will go and visit, and spend some time.
By all means, you
that was
will
my
be.
question. Thank you. But do you have a question?
No, I just had one other point I'd like to end on, Ruben, and I think it's striking that this point you're talking about. I'm almost thinking about, the timelessness of art and the timelessness of music, and the way you're kind of talking about already in some ways the lyrics which Manuel was just kind of repeating, we're already kind of mobilizing them against the new forms of violence and authoritarianism to come. And the new kinds of disappearances, because we know disappearance is not a static problem, right? It changes context, it changes. And I think already we are having to become aware of these new forms of violence which are slowly emerging. And that's where the timelessness of art comes in, because it does constantly remind us of the basic humanism we all share. And I think, so I thank you for that, for actually repeating that to us today. So.
Thank you. And I just wanted to mention something else. I mean, I did a song about disappearances also. I collaborated with Sting. There was a song called Ellas Bailan Solas. They dance.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I did. He called me and he said, I want something in Spanish in the song, and so I did the verse. I translated one of his verses, and then I thought that was it, and he said, no, I want you to do it. I want you to say it. And then I said, oh, okay. So I did it. And then he called me and he said, I want you to be in the video. We did that song when we played in Chile with Amnesty International when Pinochet was still president of Chile. We played that song in El Estadio Nacional where they had tortured and killed allegedly Jara. That was allegedly killed. So I wanted to mention Sting also because I remember that time also everybody was very concerned when we were in Chile because obvious reasons.
Right. Okay, I brought a couple of lines just to close this. So I would like to close by offering a very short reflections on Rubén's work, what it has meant, not only to me personally, but by many across Latin America and beyond, especially in the context of this series of enforced disappearance. For me, growing up in Cuba in the 70s and the 80s, Rubén's music was part of the soundtrack of daily life. His songs were catchy. Everybody was singing them in the streets. We learned to dance with your music, not only yours, but there was a wide array of salsa at the time. But what made yours particularly interesting was that it carried meaning. Your songs were what I had this somewhere that the word it was thinking people salsa, right? Because they talk about poverty, corruption, inequality, violence, you name it. But what always stood out to me is that you really never shied away from uncomfortable truths. This is what we have been discussing right here. It's like you kind of took the realities of Latin Americans and somehow chronicle them, right? Yeah. I mean, and again, Alan Garcia is a classic case, right? It's you take that this guy could be anybody. Again, it could be anybody who got fired and is just pissed off and want to go and.
I'm writing a song right now about sexual abuse of children.
Oh my God.
And a lot of people don't want to talk about that. And they don't want to talk about the fact that most sexually abused children are abused at the home. And it's a very uncomfortable truth. I'm writing a song about that. And why am I doing that? I know it's going to create, some people are not going to like it, but I'm going to do it because it should be done. It's a discussion that should be have. If I can be a part of creating, steering it up. So there's some conversation about it, then that's what we're going to do, because who speaks for those children? Become adults and with those memories unresolved. also a song about jail, about how tough jail is. We'd rather not know what goes on inside a jail. I work with people in jail, so I know what it is. How difficult it is. I know. I seen it. I cannot imagine living under those conditions. Although I did spend time with people in jail for periods of time, doing my research, my thesis on repeat criminals. But the thing is, I will continue to write about things that other people don't want to touch because it could affect their careers, I guess. I don't have a career.
Writing about violence and children is always it's a terrible thing. I have to do it myself, and it's a challenge.
And I have a song about Cuba called Cualquier Día de Esto. I'm gonna put it out soon.
Yeah, I need to listen to that one actually.
Not out yet, but it will be out. The day where people can really be able to express what they feel and not be repressed by the regime.
Yeah. So just to finish, all this stuff about your work is particularly relevant when we look at this song, Desapariciones. You wrote it, I don't know, late 70s, early 80s, right? And it gave voice, as you were saying before, to a phenomenon, something that was being kept, trying to be hidden by military regimes, security forces, armed groups. Everybody was participating in a way or another, right? And the song, as you say, it doesn't offer ideology. It doesn't offer explanations. It tells stories. It's the woman looking for her husband, the sister who vanished in thin air.
Simple questions. Where are they? When will they come?
A mother. Yeah.
Who took them?
A mother exactly. Who took my son? Who took my mother? And they are painfully real, Rubén. And the video that was, we didn't discuss it enough, but it was filmed in the mid 1980s in Peru. It also shows this very well. This we were actually discussing before we came to this meeting that this is the Peru where the new Pope landed, right? He landed there in the mid 1980s, and he went there as a missionary. So he probably experienced this firsthand. He's probably firsthand witness of all of it.
Shining path.
Yeah, shining path, exactly. Yeah, but again, this doesn't end in the 1980s. It's happening all over the world. Mexico, over 100,000 people are officially listed as disappeared today. I mean, it's heartbreaking,
But like I said before, I think it's a phase. I'm very optimistic. I have to tell you, I'm very optimistic. I do think it's a phase. I think that good will prevail over evil. I don't see a universe ruled by evil. I don't see that happen. I don't think the universe would allow that to happen. So it's a phase, but it's a difficult phase. And in order to reach that, a better society, we all have to mobilize and we all have to express ourselves. Yeah. And art is a way to express yourself in the most humane way possible.
Yeah. But this is something you have done very well, which is to remind us not to become numb to injustice and to pain, to continue to see the people behind the headlines and ask questions. Change doesn't always start in a courtroom or in a government office. It starts with people like you or like people like Chantal, people who have a voice and who are able to have a voice, a verse, a song, a story that reminds us, what you were saying before, exactly the words that you were saying before. Where is my friend? Where is my father? Where is my child? And that's very much the power of art, and that's the power of Chantal's work with that is, I think I was telling them before, some of her paintings are actually difficult to look at because they really, you can see what she put in the canvas, right? And it's the same with your music. So, thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks to Chantal, thanks to Brad, and thanks to everybody who joined us. And it's been a privilege. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you, Chantal, Manuel. Thank you, and everybody who's been watching. Thank you all very much. Thank you for the opportunity, and I hope to see you at Bath. Clara, 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 millones se llama mi madre. Ella es un alma de Dios, no se mete con nadie.
llevado